To get started, the first thing you need to do is create your Zap in the developer platform. Go through the settings on just creating the name and everything. And then you need to go to authentication, which is the first step. And you want to create your authentication by API key. And you can play around with the settings, like putting in your URL and everything, but it's not necessarily necessary unless you're like really publishing this. But if you're just doing it for internal use, this does the trick. So you want to give it your label, API key, and the key that it needs is auth token. So you definitely want to put auth token, and it needs to be that. You can set it to required and then hit save. So the next step would be to go down to your connection, and this would be just an endpoint that you would use just for testing. It has nothing to really do with the actual API key itself. You're really just making sure that you're able to fetch data from your API on your CRM. So most important part, we want to click here on show options and remove the URL parameters. You want HTTP headers, and you want to throw your auth token spelled exactly the way we did with the key. And this little like short code here is essentially going to grab the token that you enter in when you do authenticate. And that part is when basically when you connect your app and it asks you for your API key and you enter it in, it's going to dynamically put that in place and put it into the HTTP header. Request body, we don't need options, it doesn't matter. So that's really all you need for authentication. Last part is test your authentication. So I'm not going to do this because it's going to return sensitive data that I already have. Click on that. I know it works. You can use on your own. It will work. So to test some of the next parts here, one of the most basic ones for me was to create a new company in the CRM. So I created an action on it. Actions and triggers both work very similar. They kind of they're handled the same way, really. In my case, I just wanted it as an action. So for example, I'm going to be creating a form on my website, on my WordPress site, that will, someone enters in data, their name, the company, whatever, and it gets sent into Zapier. And then I can go to my next step would be the action to create the company inside of the CRM. So let's jump over to that part. If we go to the company, you would normally just create a new action here. I call mine create company. And you want to make sure that this part is internal for Zapier. So I just did create _ company, following kind of what they recommend here. Then create company, company is a noun, and then you have to populate this description. The next steps are the input designer, and this is where, like, if you're going through a Zap, the fields that get entered. So like in this case, in my example, when somebody enters in a form, you would see that form entry on the previous step, and you could either hard code an entry into the input, or you dynamically grab it from whatever that form entry was. So you want to just add an input field here. I'll just edit what I have here, and this is a label, so it doesn't really matter what you call it. Create company. This part matters. You want to grab the API key, and on the documentation here, you can see on the first step here, add new customer. Every one of these have mandatory fields that must be added in order for it to create it, and this one's basic, it only needs one. So company, that is your API key right there. So you want to drop that in. You can put help text, anything else you want here. One thing I did go through trying to figure this out was, what type of data does the API expect? You can go through here and it will say a string, it needs a number, or anything else. Like if you go into some of the other ones, like creating projects or something, it's going to like want dates. You do need to format it, of course, what it's recommending. Like if it's a number, you just obviously put a number in. So you can set that as required, and then you hit save. And then the next step is your API configuration. And you want to, this one we're going to do a post. You can, since we're putting information into the CRM, and then you want to put your address where you have your CRM hosted. This is mine. So the next step, again, similar to the authentication, you click on show options and it's going to pre-populate a bunch of things here. The most important part here was on the HTTP header part, putting in the content type and then adding this piece right here. I do have my auth token in here. I think it might have pre-populated these. You can delete these. I think it all needs to just be in the request header. The request body, this is where it's sending the data to the CRM. This is, so you want to put whatever it is that you're doing, creating a company, you want to put your API key here, and then, they got the little shortcode here for adding that detail in. So when you go down to the test setup, you can test this, and it does work.